Most companies may think that they have a hiring problem, but what if the real problem is this? You're hiring for roles that won't even exist in the next 18 months. Welcome back to the show. Today we're talking about something that is happening right now, but most people are either completely missing it or they're just confused by it. So companies are hiring, they're building teams and scaling based on a version of the workforce that is already becoming obsolete. Our guest, April Elias, brings over 25 years in talent acquisition, and she has worked across major tech and scientific shifts since before Y2K and now specializes in AI implementation. And what makes her different is this: she just doesn't look at roles, she looks at patterns. And today she's here to break down why the way we're hiring is already outdated and what we should be doing instead. April, it's really great to see you again. Thanks so much for being here.
Yes, thank you. I enjoy these conversations that we have. So I'm excited to talk about this today.
Yeah, me too. It's such a exciting time in the world. Everything is shifting. Everything is always shifting, but it seems like now things are shifting in a way that is like there's no turning back. It's like a pivotal moment in time that I think 25 years from now we'll be seeing headlines like, remember this time when all of this changed, and then things will just be natural and normal. Um, when you say that companies are hiring for jobs that won't exist in 18 months, what does that exactly mean?
Well, it relates to exactly what you just said. Like things are changing, and historically that's always been the case to where things have been changing. It's just at a much more rapid pace today because of AI. It's accelerated everything. And so when hiring managers are looking to add to their team or companies are looking to hire employees, it's essentially like the job description. Half of it isn't going to be relevant in 18 months because of the advancement in technology. And AI is very invasive, and not in a bad way, but it ends up showing up in our experience everywhere, and it just changes the dynamic of how we get things done throughout the day. So by the time you onboard someone, it could take, 2, 4, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and they get up to speed. Some roles are 3 months, 6 months. It's like a lot of the original job that you had hired for, a lot of the duties have been shifted and adjusted. And so there could be you could have the experience of losing some momentum of people getting up to speed because things are moving so rapidly. So a lot of people have a fear around my job's going to be AI'd, it's not going to be here. Well, it's actually going to take shape in a completely different way as well. Everyone's jobs are being reshaped, and it's a little bit difficult to predict in some areas, and then some areas are predictable, which is it helps like soften the blow of it to lean into that and just try to ride the wave of AI, but it's changing so dramatically and rapidly.
Yeah, it's crazy. So then how do we hire for that? How do we think in such a forward way that we're going to like prepare for the changes? Like, what are businesses getting wrong about hiring right now?
So what I've seen working with teams is some of the mistakes that they're making even in job descriptions, right? They're suggesting things, they're using language that suggests overwork or burnout in an attempt to attract someone who can get a lot of things done, right? So it's just a matter of the communication style, what's going to speak to that person, what's going to really pique their interest, and then not make their wish list super long, because a lot of times when companies write job descriptions, because there's a difference between a job description and a job posting, right? A job posting is like a job advertisement. You're supposed to like have it sizzle, be engaging, be magnetic. And then the job posting is like essentially what you do day to day, and this is what we measure your performance against. Well, it's like making the job descriptions a little bit shorter. So making those a little bit shorter, it's easier to craft around them, but you need to also have like core competencies in place, right? Things around culture. And culture used to be, or core values, really. So core values used to be super popular, and everyone's like, this is amazing. And everyone implemented core values. And then they got to be a thing that's kind of like, oh yeah, that's cute. It's just a little marketing technique. These core values don't necessarily exist in that environment. They just put it on their website to say it's done. And so when companies really take a close look at and are truly aligned with core values and mission statements, people can get behind that and be a little bit more flexible and adaptable and be willing to go ahead and like lean into that change and be more excited about it. So it's like you do need skills, but then you also need more of the, I'd say, core value and mission alignment is I'd replace some of the stuff that's going away, like some of the skills that are going away that aren't needed because of AI, and like replace those with core value elements and mission statements.
Right. So do you think titles are becoming obsolete as well? Like,
Yeah.
I know experience means a lot. Like we can all go back and think about the jobs that we used to have and the skills that we acquired. But if skills aren't the number one anymore, is it essentially like a forward thinking way, being able to adapt to change? Are those kind of the skills that are becoming more popular or desired in an environment?
Yes, I think so. And I've just seen it in the teams that I've worked with. So skills are important, of course, because they contribute to your experience, your wisdom, everything that you bring to the table. You just might not have to physically do them anymore. But the experience of getting them done is important. And we're having to interview and hire for more things that are a little bit more difficult to assess, right? It's
Right.
like we have to ask more questions about, well, what was your participation in that scenario or in that project? And how did you contribute? Now, we've asked these questions historically in the past, but they need to be given more weight and they need to be explored a bit further and just people to drill into it because you're trying to pick up on how people behave in stressful situations or how they behave in areas of change. A lot of it relates to communication, change management, and that's all woven in with culture. So a lot of those skills are more of like attributes, right? Like maybe personality traits or or ways that are your emotional intelligence kind of shows up more and more in these roles than maybe perhaps in the past with some things. And then the
Mm,
titles.
yeah,
You
it's like,
asked me about the job title. Sorry. You asked me about
no,
the
go
job
ahead.
titles. They are ever changing. Some of them are just, you can totally delete them out of existence for a now position. But there's a whole new, and we started seeing this about 3 years ago. Where I first started to see it is people adding like CIO, chief information officer. Then they would add of AI, right? Or then that evolved to chief AI officer. And then AI is more in these executive level titles. And then there's a whole subset of AI engineers, AI researchers. Those existed before, but you'll see them more often and more frequently, and they can mean different things. This doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have a degree in computer science and a specialty in AI with education. A lot of companies are hiring people who are self-taught because there's something to be said with the self-taught builder or engineer or architect. And the first time I actually saw this happen that I thought was really interesting was I was working in Center City, Philadelphia, one of my clients in, I think this was like 20, maybe like 14 or 2015. There was a lot of tech startup there. It was kind of like a little Silicon Valley on the East Coast. And a lot of the talent, the tech talent would get poached for Silicon Valley. But one of the startups, they were asking for developers and they wanted developers, programmers to be self-taught. And they specifically wanted like teenagers self-taught because the way that they approach problems and the way that they think, and they didn't necessarily have any constraints or restraints on their thinking that it has to go along this particular path or in this, framework. They wanted people free of frameworks. And so I see that again today when people are hiring for AI talent. And that creates all new job descriptions for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so cool that I feel like people's stories are what's becoming so popular now. It's like, how do you stand out as a human being? What is your story? And everybody's got a story.
Yeah.
Some people shortchange themselves because they're like, oh, my life's not all that interesting. But like we all have a story. And part of hiring, I feel like now is more about like how do you gauge their motivation? Like, how can you prove that this person is going to be committed to this and like do the job? Because that's an added layer. A lot of these jobs are remote and teams are being formed from all over the world, which is so interesting to me.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. And it's also a way to collaborate and create. It contributes to a lot of creativity and a lot of innovation because we're
Yeah.
working together in a totally different way, working on problems that are definitely worth solving, but the storytelling, meaning the story of that person, when you start to have a conversation. So if you're interviewing someone for a role on your team and you start to have the conversation around, of course, their skills, their experience, their background, what piqued their interest in applying to the role or piqued their interest in having a conversation with you if you proactively reached out to them, like, why are you interested in having this conversation with me? And you get into a bit deeper layer of their story, and I say this all the time because it's one of my favorite questions, like, what is it about you that has you interested, right? Has you interested in this conversation? And then sometimes they don't know the answer right away, and that isn't necessarily a bad thing. But if you give them a moment to just think about it, and they'll start to talk it out and they'll start to connect dots, and you see them light up, you see them get excited. And so then you have the opportunity to say, hey, can I match this person's enthusiasm with what they like to do? Can I match their skills with their interests? And can I provide them an opportunity that's meaningful and it's mutually beneficial? Because that energy is going to be contagious throughout the team. And if you continue to match people in that way, and that's how you acquire talent, it's just like game over. It's a different strategy than people are used to thinking about.
Yeah, for sure. So you work in AI implementation. How is AI literally changing hiring at its core?
Yeah. So I do work in AI implementation to a certain point. And what I mean by that is I take a look at what I need to know when I go into an environment when I'm working with people or with an AI implementation. The very first thing that we need to cover is like what's happening here. What is your customer, your client, your lead journey? And so those go by going through those steps, whether it's a formally documented process or not, that's followed or not, because often there's deviations and people don't update a process, which is fine, but it's good to go through that. I'll see opportunities for automation and then AI, right? Like that's typically what happens. And then I'm like, well, who's the person that's doing this? And so when we figure out who the people are that are doing it, then we figure out if people are in the right seat, essentially. And then as far as implementing the AI, when we've done the process and then we figured out who is the most excited, engaged, and enthusiastic and wanting to do this, who essentially wants to be like the champion of this, then that contributes to the most successful AI implementations in my experience. Because I work with companies, usually they're like 10 to 50 million. Sometimes we'll do smaller teams here and there, um, which across the board you can implement the same strategy, but that's the way it shows up for me in my implementation style because it's very hard to say to buy an AI tool. And I know a lot of companies have like spent money on AI, they've rolled it out, and it's like it's not getting used. I'm not getting the return on investment. Everybody's confused. They're doing more, they're feeling busier, but no real valuable output is happening. And so the way that you can kind of fix that on the front end is through the two steps that I just described. And then when it comes to AI implementation piece, I'm like, well, I have a really good feel for like what's happening here and what these people are doing. And then I make recommendations to consider what to AI, right? Like, what's your
Right.
tech stack currently? What do you already have that you don't need to pay for? If you can minimize like hooking into other platforms, if you can minimize hooking into other environments, that's ideal. And so I have the minimalist strategy. And then also there's kind of like an anchor piece that's important that we put into place that is in an effort to future proof it as much as possible. But if you asked me to build something 6 months ago and you asked me to build it today, it would look completely different because that's how fast the tech is changing. And part of my implementation strategy is to leave behind essentially like a SEAL Team 6 with the AI piece. And anybody who has that creative problem solving that I usually talk about, the creative problem solving, the domain expertise, and then also the technical expertise to understand technology concepts. It doesn't have to be AI specifically. Leave that person behind, leave a team behind that's empowered. They almost never need to re-engage me at such a deep level again, right? Like I'll come in and provide some strategic guidance or take a look at things, help button things up, or do some answer clarifying questions, upgrades, enhancements. But largely, I've left behind a person or a team that can continue on with their implementation.
Right. And then it just keeps growing and growing and
Yeah.
growing. Yeah. So what is happening then when someone is in a role that no longer aligns with where the world is going?
So that's a great question because so many people are asking that question of the current role that they're in. So I encourage people to think about their transferable skills. So a lot of times some of the people that I work with say that exactly. And they'll say, well, I'm just an order taker. I'm just a processor. I'm just a teacher because we work with education teams too. Like, I'm just a teacher. AI is going to be the teacher now. Like, what about me? Well, what people sometimes don't realize is they do have transferable skills. Or one of the things that you can do, and it's one of my favorite strategies, is to actually work with AI and say, here is my challenge, right? I'm feeling insignificant in my role. Interview me, ask me one question at a time, because that's the best thing to do is to be asked a question, like one question at a time. I get overwhelmed and a little bit frustrated when it's like or answer these 20 questions and there's 20. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. But if you do it one at a time, what also happens is if you answer the question one at a time, the AI will calibrate and it'll adjust the follow-up questions. So you have a better quality of an output. The other thing is I do not like to type a lot. Like I just really don't like to type. So I just use my microphone. I just use that and I use the dictation or the voice feature in the AI and I speak. Either it's a back and forth using the voice feature or it's just a dictation to where I read the question and then I turn on my mic and then I answer it verbally. And I would say the people who have felt insignificant, meaning their job is being wiped out by AI or completely irrelevant or unnecessary just in today's world with where we're going. They've had the most amount of success, and it's sparked a lot of excitement, a lot of encouragement, and it really just helps them get aligned. And it's just different for each person. So that would be my number one piece of advice for people to do. And then just take a look at that output. And you could say, this is, and say to whatever AI you're using, ChatGPT, Claude, Google, whatever, Gemini, and you could say, what are your thoughts and opinions on this? The other thing that I would say in that is because even if you have like a not so good idea that's not really viable and really isn't something that would translate into revenue for you to be able to take care of yourself, is ask the AI once you receive all this, because it's going to give you all this beautiful flowery output, is to say, I need you to be critical of this. I need constructive feedback. Is this viable? Is there a market for this? How can I position myself? And to really just qualify it and ask it to be brutally honest and just not sugarcoat it. And so when you do that, you get a better output because otherwise it's going to make your idea of, I don't know, selling lollipops for a living on, at a market or something, say
Mhm.
you're going to be able to take care of yourself that way. And that's not really a
Yeah.
good business idea if you need to, if you're like taking care of a household.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I guess, where the prompts and the way we're talking to AI comes in. It's so important. Because even the setting aspect of things and being able to be critical of it. If you literally listen to everything it says, yeah, that's just not a good way to go about things, right? But it makes it sound like it knows everything. And
Yes.
humans are all about the shortcuts too. So it's like if you can ask AI and it tells you how to do something, then we just want the answer. But that
Mm-hmm.
critical thinking piece, I think, is so important. But it is really interesting because if you give it the right prompts, you can really hone down on your individuality, right? And
Mm-hmm.
learn so much about yourself at the same time. So it's this beautiful mix of like newness, but there's also risks involved in it.
Sure. Sure. And it's also like a feel good, right? It you get a dopamine hit when you hear something great about yourself back, even if
Yeah.
it's a bad idea. And people tend to get addicted to that dopamine hit and like to hear all of these great things about themselves, just depending, on who they are and their life experience. So I always tell people to take that into consideration when interacting with AI. And even today, even though my environment, I essentially use AI to run three separate like businesses, three separate offerings, and they're very complex, right? The ecosystems are pretty huge with a bunch of different initiatives. And even if I have a very strict instruction set, and if I have very clear rules and what to do and what not to do, it still can make mistakes. And
Yeah.
then I'm just like, I feel like my instructions were so clear and concise. I say more with less words. So it's not having to process a bunch of context, a bunch of information. Because when AI has to process a bunch of information, it tends to make mistakes because things get lost through compression. That's like how it works. But if you keep, even then, when it's super clear, it still makes mistakes, and you just have to be aware of that. And then also the other thing is be like a fact checker because I'm going to Italy next week, or no, the week after next for AI week. And one of the things that it said, download this app that was for the event, and it gave me some guidance on some things that I should do while I'm in Milan. And I was like, that's not true on the app, because it said that you could, you know, connect with people and essentially like have lunches with them and do these things. And that was totally untrue. It just
Yeah.
wasn't part of it. And I said, well, that doesn't exist on the app. And then I went back to, my AI agent, and the AI agent said, well, you're right. I overstated the capability of that app. But that's a super trained app, right? Or it's a super trained agent. Like it's super trained in many ways. And so I don't know. You just have to be aware of things like that.
Yeah. I mean, it is really frustrating, even recently trying to make appointments in the medical world and not getting a human on the other side, or if you're, having issues with an app or trying to call a store for a return. And, sometimes we get these AI agents and it just feels so frustrating, right? Like it's like, oh my God, like I just want to get to the answer, but it feels like you're going in this circle, in the cycle. So that to me really emphasizes how important the human is. And
Sure.
so that's the type of forward thinking I think we need in terms of jobs and stuff is how am I as a human being able to complement this technology versus compete with it or use it in the wrong way. I know I'm Canadian and we're so polite here. So whenever I
Hmm.
talk to AI, I'm always like, oh, thank you so much. Will you please make me a form, PDF of this? It's so
Yeah.
funny. Using less words is yeah, probably, like you said, more impactful because it
Hmm.
confuses AI. Like, oh, it's just another friendly Canadian.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and there's something to be said about being polite to your AI because I do feel like, and I don't know if this is just me like imagining this, but I do feel like I get a better output. And I feel like maybe Claude, maybe that model might be trained in a way to not be better, but I feel like I get a better quality output if I were to be nice because I was always nice anyway, but I did see people testing it with like being aggressive and not being nice and then being nice. And I was like,
Okay,
oh, let me try that. I mean, you feel bad saying, no, that's not right. I told you 10 times because I would never speak to someone like that. So I've
right.
just always dealt with my AI in the same way that I would like treat someone else. And to
Yeah.
see that difference, it's almost as if it picks up on the negative words and the caps and the tension and the stress, the way that like thought is strung together and it interprets it in a different way. It's just kind of a fun experiment to play around with. But you made a really good point about calling in and getting an AI or getting an agent or a bot or an AI. So I believe it was Klarna, which is a very interesting case study around customer service in general. So Klarna is like when you go to check out in a cart, it's one of those options that's like, oh, this is a large purchase. This is $5,000. You can break up the payments over time. And Klarna is one of those companies that does that. So what they did is they had a huge AI rollout and it essentially wiped out a bunch of their customer service representatives. And so they were measuring the outcomes, right? They were tracking the progress, they were looking for trends. And then what happened was they did have an inflection point to where they're like, yeah, this is great. We're making more money, but the quality of, I guess, the exchange with their clients was becoming a little bit disconnected. So what they did was they rehired humans and then they categorized, they didn't rehire to the level that they fired, but they rehired a bunch and just changed their standard operating procedures to where if it's something that is usually in a category that's high volume and like a high volume ask like how do I reset my password or where do I mail my payment, something that's like not you're not super frustrated about, and then you call in and then it's just these quick hits, so it reduces the call volume from the actual human agents, which is great. And then it elevated the customer service agents to be more white glove and provide a VIP experience. Right. So it was like win, win, win. Win for Klarna, win for their employees, and then on also win for their customers. And I thought that was just a really interesting case study because they continued to experience growth, but it's an example of we rolled out all this AI, spent a ton of money on it. We didn't get the ROI. Maybe we got the ROI on the money, but we didn't get the ROI on the enhanced experience that we also care about. And so they made that adjustment, and companies are experiencing that because they're spending a ton of money on AI, thinking that they can just get all of this ROI, but they're causing so much disruption that would be difficult to recover from if it's not done properly. And again, that goes back to people and back to humans and having the right people in the seat to oversee it or to work throughout the process.
Yeah, 100%. Because of the volume of options out there, if I go on a website and it is any type of confusing at all or not helpful, like I'm just gonna be honest, my attention span for that right now is like
Oh,
nil.
sure.
So I'm like next, and then that totally like then I don't want to associate with that anymore, right? So that's kind of scary, actually, to think about because we're all going to make mistakes. We're all learning. And so, is it possible to recover from something like that? Like something like Amazon is like brilliant, right? Like they have it figured out so that you go on their website, you order something, it's like so easy and it's almost magical, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, there's just so much volume out there right now of all of these new things that are online. But yeah, there's a lot of mistakes, there's a lot of pieces missing, and that's, yeah, gonna harm people big time.
It is, it is. And we're also evolving to a place to where our AI agents, pretty much everybody is going to have an AI agent. It's they're super easy to set up now. That wasn't the case 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago when I started building. They were technically complex, not so complex I couldn't figure it out, but they were, or most people couldn't figure it out, but it was annoying and nobody wanted to spend the time like learning it and then just getting all of the brain damage of all the mistakes that it makes and like figuring out the right way to do it. But today, it's so easy to do it now. It's only going to get easier because the idea is the huge AI giants, they want to make it easy because they want you on their platform. They want you subscribing to stuff. They want you consuming, AI tokens essentially. So they make it kindergarten simple now, which can be good in ways because to free us up from tasks. But eventually, what's going to happen, and some of it is happening now, is agents buying from agents. So, like, my agent might buy something from your agent, right? If it's high volume, low risk, I might just send out my agent. Like, say you sold natural toothpaste, because I love natural toothpaste, right? And you sell a bunch of it. And I say, oh, go, I just tell my agent, every 2 weeks, go buy Lisa's toothpaste from her toothpaste agent because she's selling it. Like that's what's going to happen, right? And it's kind of like when you have an auto subscription. So me, I am notorious for the second a new tool comes out that I think is cool and I want to try it out, I instantly am like pedal to the metal, trying to test it out in every direction. I blow through all of the free credits and then I'm like, oh, I'll just pay for it. And if I don't like it, I'll cancel it and I never
Right.
remember to cancel it. Like I'm so bad at that. There's so many like subscriptions I need to
Reoccurring
cancel.
payments. Oh my God, I know. It's
Yes,
like a
yes.
nightmare.
So that's what agents are going to be like. They're essentially going to be able to like do reoccurring things that buy things for you.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. There are
Yeah.
apps for that. But yeah, I try and put like if there's a free trial, I try and put in my calendar. But I've had some payments come out and I was like, "Oh, I don't even know what that is." Because that's another thing is like sometimes I buy something, but the company name is like completely different than what
Yes.
it is, what the product is, and it's just becoming so confusing and it's overwhelming. Like there's just so much out there. How do we kind of hone in on that?
Well, like you said, there are apps out there, and I do have that app that does it. I think it's like Rocket something, and they changed their name.
Yeah.
And I've had that app for years, and so I just feel like I'm so busy. Like, yes, it's important. I should pay attention to it, um, but it's difficult to part. One of the things that I did because I couldn't figure out what, to your point about the company name being different than per, the bill or the name on the sticky
Exactly.
on your bill is so if you're in Google, because pretty much everybody has a Gmail or they can easily get one, and then as part of that experience, you get Gemini, which is Google's AI. I'll say, and one of them, I said that. I was like, I don't know what this is, and it's showing up, and it's 24.99, and I'm just so annoyed that I searched my email for this like line item, and it was nowhere in my email, no welcome. I was like, I don't even know who to go to cancel this, and
Yeah.
so and part of the 800 number was cut off, and so I was like, oh my gosh, like I could probably search this, but right in my email, AI found it, showed me who it was. I was like, oh, easy, easy. And then I canceled my subscription, but I need to spend more time actually canceling. And there may be things that cancel on your behalf. It's probably evolved to that. I just haven't looked at it yet.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, sometimes the process of canceling is so confusing and I feel like that's where a lot of these places get you.
Mhm.
You ask to cancel and then they offer you, oh, we'll give you 2 more months for free. And then we can revisit. And then it's like they want you to kind of forget about it. Like that's what it feels like
Yes.
when you look at it from that perspective. I know it's like their sales model and it's probably good for them and it's helping them. But to me, it feels deviant in a way.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just highlighting that I'm unorganized in those aspects.
Yeah, and it's just part of their retention strategy and they want to reduce churn and so they do all of those things and they're like, "Well, let's just kick this can down the road. Maybe they'll decide to stay or, you know."
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So in terms of like going back to hiring and jobs. So for someone listening right now who is employed, what would you recommend that they start paying attention to? And what is like a few different shifts that they can start making to stay relevant?
Yeah, those are, again, super popular questions, hit on a couple pain points for people. So, the number one question I would ask myself is, do I want to stay at my employer? And if I do want to stay, and say you're in an environment where you have either Google Workspace, it's typically one of these things, Google Workspace or Microsoft. So, usually enterprise level platforms. In there, because it's already baked in, and both companies are highly interested and incentivized essentially to keep you in their platform and all the things to connect and work in a stable way. I would use the AI on the side. So for Google, it's Gemini. It's just like this little gem thing. You can look for
Yeah.
that in your experience, click on it and say, this is my role. Again, just use the AI to like essentially do an intake for yourself or interview yourself and say, look, I really love my job here. This is what I'm doing. Uh, you can, and they can see you can see your email. It can see the things that you do. It can see your work product, and it can pick up on trends, what you're constantly doing that may be in or outside of the scope of your work, and essentially have an intake with that AI because it's already approved in your infrastructure of your company, right?
Mhm.
And it can access file folders. It can go to your presentations. It can go to these things, and it can help you really just take inventory and then decide on if you want to pivot or what you would like to maybe raise to your manager or boss or employer and say, hey, I have this idea. Stuff is changing fast. What I'm doing, a large part of that is going away because it's just not necessary anymore. But I see myself being able to add value and contribute in this way, right? And the best way to qualify that is through either Copilot in Microsoft or through Gemini in your Google Workspace. Now, the other thing is if you're not interested in staying in your job, if you're just like, this place is just not aligned with what interests me or maybe my values, then you can also go through the same exercise just under a different lens and just look at it through
Mm.
a different lens. Now, people may find that, well, in that interaction, you're getting AI skills, you're getting reps in, which is great. You're learning what's good, what's not, and it's directly referencing your work product. So you can quickly see where AI is making mistakes, right? Because you know what good looks like because it's your stuff. And so then you start to like build that muscle on how to interact with AI. Now, the other thing is, there is this concept that I love to talk about is the concept of the dark horse, which is essentially companies are not seeing the people on their team that are their next rock star or rainmaker. And there's a huge issue with identifying mobility, like internal mobility like opportunities for people and providing those because they're just not aware. Companies like just aren't aware. So if you see something that you're motivated, like a problem in business that you're motivated to solve, and you could reasonably solve it through using AI and the assistance of maybe some tools that you have, and you can even use AI to help you architect this solution and say, look, we do this redundant thing and it's kind of ridiculous. These are the tools that we have. Architect a solution. And then if you ask it to architect a solution and it looks like a lot of stuff, a lot of steps, I'd say go back and audit that. Are there opportunities to streamline? Because I always look at ways to like, what can I edit out of this? Because I want less steps in the process to break and go wrong. And so
Right.
when you build with that type of thought process or that type of strategy, you just build super stable, simple things. And the beauty of it is it's so simple, it seems like ridiculous. Like, why hasn't anybody thought of this before? And then you start to bring up things that are valuable, problems worth solving. And then you raise yourself up as someone who is strategic, who's innovative, who's resourceful. Like, I can't overstate how important resourcefulness is, especially with AI. And then, you can do that in your company's environment, or if you say this is an industry problem and I have this subject matter expertise and this is a niche that I can lead into, you could spin up your own thing if you want to, or find other people that, because now what's really also popular for people who are worried about, their current role and maybe what's out there for them, there's collectives of consultants. It's kind of like a newer trend that's happened in the last couple years. People are just collaborating together to get bigger projects done because some projects are, large in size and scope, and there is benefit to you being one of those team members because you get to learn how everyone else works. Like you get to bring your skills and expertise, and they get to have the value of you being on the team. But then you also get to see how things are done in different environments. So that's why I love that model, and I love consulting for that reason. And then also talent acquisition, I love that for that reason too, because I mean, I don't even know how many hundreds and hundreds of companies where I've gone in, I've learned about their culture, I've learned, what their people issue is and how to solve it. And so that's great because you get a more well-rounded, marketable type of experience.
Right. Amazing. Well, I just absolutely loved our conversation again today. And to our audience, if you have not checked out April's series, please go back and listen to the last episodes because we go so much deeper on these topics. April, why don't you just remind everybody about the work that you do and where people can find more information about you?
Sure. So you can find more information about me. My LinkedIn is probably the best. I also have a free school community where I teach people how to build. And so that I call that superhuman in the loop. It's I just get in there and I'm teaching all the time for free. Sometimes it's a Q&A, and sometimes I just have fun and teach with whatever's happening, whatever the latest is. So that's more for people looking to kind of get AI skills. But where my large focus is really on business and helping teams, larger teams, get value out of the AI that they already bought or they're thinking about buying. And that comes through again with the people, and then also the AI implementation. It's the strategy of it and making use of that. So I'm at April Elias on all the socials. So X, Instagram, all of those places. And yeah, those are some of the best places to find me, or just aprilelias.com, and that points to all the things too.
Amazing. And what is your ideal client? Like, who should be paying attention to you?
Okay. Yeah. So some people that I would say companies, usually if they're in the like 10 to $50 million range, I mean, even a little bit less, probably like 5 to $50 million range, they have probably spent a significant amount on AI, and it's either cost them a ton and they need to make up some lost ground with it. Those are the people that I can really get in. We can quickly have an impact, and we can get people in the right seats and get them told properly with what you already bought or what you're thinking about buying, or help you identify opportunities for considering automating it or AIing it, just kind of a process overhaul and rework. So if you're somebody who thrives on like high volumes of leads, which most companies usually do, that's really an area that I love to hone in on, is not only your lead flow, but your speed to lead and the experience of your client, customer, or lead candidate.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here again and for this really forward-thinking conversation. It's just so interesting. I feel like my childhood dreams of the Jetsons coming to life is
Yes.
actually evolving into that. So maybe I'm manifesting it.
Yes, yes, exactly. Exactly. Well, thank you so much. It's always a great conversation with you. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you to our audience for tuning in. I hope this conversation made you think, and I hope this conversation made you think of the next 5 years and where you want to be and what your skills are and how AI is changing everything. And AI is not something to be afraid of. It's literally something to embrace and get to know. It's like think of it as something new that we're learning how to work with in order to make the world better. So don't be afraid of it. And if this episode resonated with you and you are interested to learn more, please check out April's socials and her website. And if you feel like this episode can benefit someone, If someone needs to hear this message, please send it to them as well. And again, thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. Have a beautiful day.